Ferrari, with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, did not disappoint expectations in the third round of the 2025 Formula One season, meaning that they themselves did not expect anything more than what they achieved in the Japanese Grand Prix at the 5.807-kilometer Suzuka circuit. It may sound like a joke, but it is not at all. Yes, because as the Monegasque driver said after the race, it really hurts to give everything and achieve so little. A fourth and a seventh place are insufficient, a result that frustrates the fans. The resignation of Ferrari drivers is difficult to accept. Lewis Hamilton commented on his performance as nothing exceptional, and then emphasized that the Maranello team still has several gaps in understanding certain aspects. Therefore, he does not hide the sheer need to make progress. The different tire strategy, with the hards in the first stint and the mediums for the second part of the Japanese Grand Prix, worked very little, recovering only one position. His pace was not at the level of those ahead of him due to a series of issues he suffered from. It was exactly what the seven-time Formula One world champion expected, considering the handicap suffered in the qualifying session and the subsequent starting position, which in Suzuka is hard to overcome. For Charles Leclerc, there is a mix of awareness and frustration. Some sensations were better, with clearer ideas on how to act, although his SF25 single-seater did not satisfy him at all. Such a significant gap to Red Bull and McLaren made him suffer. With one eye already focused on the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend, the Ferrari driver hopes that Sakir can offer more satisfaction, where the car's overall package should perform better than in Japan. In theory, the first aerodynamic updates are expected for the upcoming weekend, despite the fact that Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur seemed vague, stating that before adding any new features to the car, the Maranello team's technicians and engineers need to fully understand it. It's about understanding, a refrain endlessly repeated by Mattia Binotto, which shows how well Ferrari is doing in the start of the 2025 Formula One Championship. But today we want to focus on an incident involving both of cars of the Italian side at the Suzuka circuit. An interesting issue on which we are unlikely to receive news from the historic Ferrari team. On the other hand, it is standard practice, as explaining some unclear matters, especially on a technical level, is not at all within the Italian team's choices. Let's recount the facts to get an idea. Based on the telemetry data of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari SF25 and Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes W16 from lap 46 of the Japanese Grand Prix, there is an aspect that makes us reflect. The British driver's Ferrari lacks power at the end of the straights. Car number 44 reaches its speed plateau too early, with clipping leading to a speed reduction of up to -5 km per hour. Moreover, in front of the TV cameras, the English driver talks about a problem that made them lose at least 1/10 per lap. At this point, another element needs to be mentioned to connect all the dots. Mid-race, Charles Leclerc was repeatedly asked to switch to engine 1. We are talking about the more aggressive mode for using the internal combustion engine. But the Monegasque driver has always refused, and on the radio, he said these exact words. "You've already told me this several times, but if I don't do it, there is a reason." Reflecting on the Ferrari driver's team radio communication with his race engineer Brian Bozzi, we can imagine that on the dashboard of car number 16, there were numbers that were far from reassuring. Was it a different management of the hybrid system, or perhaps some reliability issue? Lewis Hamilton's telemetry suggests that something was indeed not functioning properly. Engine modes are usually dictated by the engineers on the track. For this reason, it is very strange that a driver would deny the use of a more aggressive engine mapping. They could do this with the hybrid system, to avoid burning the amount of energy needed to defend against an opponent. Or maybe because they realize that the mode to spread the horsepower recovered from the motor generators is ineffective. Meanwhile, with the internal combustion engine, it is a matter of consumption, which is presumed to be under control by the pit wall through the data received from the sensors installed on the car. The doubt about the power unit will remain just that. Let's clarify further. Assuming that the issue was not related to fuel, not using maximum power on the internal combustion engine at certain points during a Grand Prix is generally and logically done to avoid reaching critical temperatures with the power unit or for any element that could directly compromise the engine's health. Therefore, it is very strange for the Monegasque driver to deny this, as, like the English driver, he suffered from the same issue. Even more so if we add Lewis Hamilton's comments on the issue, which in fact reduced the performance of the SF25 single-seater every single lap. However, the mystery of this team radio message is destined to remain a mystery because, as mentioned earlier, Ferrari is not in the habit of providing any kind of explanation. They really don't like it, and prefer to drop a mysterious veil over the events, a clear approach to avoid controversy, which often, however, ends up fueling it. In this scenario, we must add the last piece of the puzzle. At the beginning of the race, the top speeds of the two Italian cars were higher, and they did not suffer from that type of clipping, precisely at the moment when the fuel load on board was significantly higher, and the power needed to achieve good top speeds was greater. Looking beyond the possible power unit issue in Japan, it is fair to say that Ferrari's start to the Formula One season is a world away from how it wanted things to have kicked off. Team principal Fred Vasseur certainly sees the irony in Ferrari having delivered exactly the opposite of what it had targeted. But while it has not been an easy time for Ferrari, Fred Vasseur is still trying to see things from a glass-half-full perspective. He reckons the performance is much closer relative to the front of the field than it was 12 months ago, and that if Ferrari can find the car balance gains it needs, then it can kickstart its title ambitions. From his estimation of Ferrari being 6/10 adrift of Red Bull 12 months ago, he thinks the squad has cut that gap in half, even if that gain has not manifested itself in moving up the order much. Ferrari's start to the season appears to have been dominated by it failing to get its car into the right setup window that it needs to deliver performance at both high and low speeds. From the outside, the focus of this struggle has revolved around its ride height, and this theory gained traction after Lewis Hamilton was disqualified for a worn plank in China due to the team running its car too low. But Ferrari's situation is much more complicated than it simply wanting to run its car lower to the ground by 1 or 2 millimeters to get it in the perfect window. After all, as Frederick Vasseur has been eager to point out, this is the problem that every team up and down the pit lane is facing. What Ferrari's key challenge appears to be is in finding a strong balance through the different ride height ranges that comes from low and high-speed corners, without this then triggering its plank getting worn too much over a race distance. So, thrown on top of the chase for the perfect setup is that it needs to optimize this for when the car is full of 110 kilograms of fuel for the start of the race. So is more prone to bottoming through the extra mass, which then, again, risks wearing the plank down too much. And looking after the plank is the priority, even if it means sacrificing the perfect setup from a performance perspective. The compromises Ferrari has to make to operate the car for a heavy fuel load and the plank are not present for the sprint races, where cars have just 40 kilograms of fuel on board and the plank only has to do 1/3 of race distance. Finding a way through this has meant Ferrari's drivers have been diverging on setup in recent races as they bid to find out ways to get the car in the window it needs to be in. When the car was raised up for Japan, it was obvious that there was going to be performance left on the table, something Lewis Hamilton alluded to afterwards.